Solitude as a weapon. Tell me this, what do people fear more than death? It's not poverty, it's not pain, it's the person they cannot understand. And if you master solitude, that person is you. The truth is simple, yet terrifying. Society cannot handle what it cannot read. People want labels, explanations, categories, ways to place you neatly into a box, so they know what to expect. But once you step outside of their system of approval and dependency, you become a threat. You become an enigma. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He warned rulers not to be predictable, not to be too generous, not to reveal their full hand. Why? Because predictability makes you controllable. The moment they know what you'll do, you've already lost. But silence, mystery, these are the oldest weapons of power. Think about your own life. How often have you seen people destroy themselves by oversharing, rushing to post, to explain, to prove they're important? They crave recognition so badly that they trade their power for applause. Meanwhile, the ones who stay quiet, the ones who move in shadows, they're the ones who rewrite the game. This is where solitude becomes your advantage. To most people, being alone feels like exile, like punishment. They drown in loneliness because they need constant validation to survive. But to you, solitude is a crucible. It burns away weakness, ego, and illusion until only clarity remains. Alone, you faced your fears, your hunger, your demons, and instead of breaking, you hardened. And here is where the transformation begins. While others live out loud, exposing every fragile insecurity, you've learned the art of stillness. You know that the loudest voice rarely wins. It is the quiet observer who controls the board. When you do not rush to fill silence, you notice the tremor in someone's voice, the hesitation in their words, the mask slipping off their face. They think truth is in what they say, but you see truth in what they avoid saying. This is why your silence is not emptiness. It's surveillance, it's calculation, it's power. Machiavelli himself said, "A wise ruler cannot and should not keep his word when doing so is against his interest." The lesson? Your value is not in what you promise, but in what you withhold. Speak less, reveal less, and you deny your enemies ammunition. Every word you don't say is one less weapon that can be used against you. Now consider this. The one who needs no one cannot be bent. You no longer beg for loyalty. You no longer chase company to fill the void. You know that a mediocre ally is more dangerous than a declared enemy. Why? Because false loyalty poisons slowly, while open hostility is easier to fight. That's why you've stopped dragging dead weight beside you. You don't explain, you don't convince, you don't beg. You walk alone if you must, because dragging someone unwilling is the slowest form of self-destruction. This choice terrifies people. They can't comprehend why you're not desperate for validation, for applause, for recognition, so they call you cold, distant, mysterious. But here's the paradox. The more mysterious you become, the more they obsess over you. Scarcity creates value. Mystery creates fear, and both create control. Think of diamonds. They aren't valuable because they're useful. They're valuable because they're rare. Now apply that to yourself. The less accessible you are, the more your presence matters when you finally appear. Others try to be everywhere, in every conversation, in every spotlight, but their overexposure makes them disposable. You become unforgettable by being unseen until it matters most. This is the law of scarcity turned into flesh. And with scarcity comes another weapon, timing. You don't rush to prove yourself. You don't need to announce your victories, because the most devastating strike is the one they never saw coming. Think of the sniper high above the battlefield. He does not fire endlessly. He waits, he studies, he chooses the single perfect moment. And when the shot lands, the battle ends before the enemy even knew it began. That is you. That is what solitude trains you to be. Now pause and ask yourself, Would you rather be the one constantly broadcasting, desperately chasing attention, or the one who bends the room with a glance, who speaks only when silence has already made everyone lean in? Because here's the Machiavellian secret: power doesn't belong to the noisiest. It belongs to the one who needs nothing, reveals nothing, and strikes only when the outcome is already guaranteed. Most people will never understand this path. They will keep suffocating under the need to be seen, while you, quiet, unreadable, untouchable, will rise above them. So when they ask why you're silent, when they accuse you of being distant, remember this: mystery is your shield, scarcity is your sword, and solitude is your command center. You are not weak for being alone. You are lethal. Detachment, ego, and strategy. Machiavelli once wrote, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." To most, this sounds ruthless. To you, it should sound like freedom, because what he's really saying is this: attachment to promises, to approval, to appearances is weakness. Detachment is strategy. And nothing poisons strategy more quickly than ego. Ego is the beast that demands applause. Ego wants to show off, to prove, to be validated. But every time you bow to ego, you give your enemies what they crave most: predictability. They know how to manipulate you with flattery, with insults, with temptations. They can lead you by your hunger for recognition like a puppet on strings. Ask yourself, how many brilliant minds have been destroyed because they needed to be seen as brilliant? How many powerful men collapsed because their pride forced them to fight? Every insult, every slight, every meaningless battle? Machiavelli warned against this very trap. The ruler who must respond to every criticism, who must defend his honor at every turn, exhausts his resources and makes himself a slave to opinion. But you? You are not here to be ruled by ego. You are here to use it. In solitude, you learn to cage your ego like a wild animal. You feed it just enough to keep it alive, but you never let it drive your actions. You use its fire for energy, but never for direction. Because when ego commands, you lose the long game. When strategy commands, you win it. Here's where detachment enters the stage. Detachment is not apathy. Detachment is immunity. It means they can praise you or insult you, and your course remains the same. They can tempt you with rewards or threaten you with loss, and you remain unmoved. You feel, but you are not ruled by feelings. You respond, but you are not chained to reactions. Most people are addicted to immediate results. They crave quick victories to soothe their fragile egos. They want applause now, validation today, acknowledgement this second. But the Machiavellian mind understands something deeper. Impatience is the enemy of strategy. The one who waits, who builds in silence, who withholds action until the moment ripens. That is the one who cannot be defeated. Think of Caesar crossing the Rubicon. Think of Napoleon biding his time before striking his rivals. Their genius was not only in battle but in timing, and timing belongs only to those who can detach. Detachment also gives you clarity. When you no longer rush to prove yourself, you begin to see the world as it truly is. You notice the sycophant who flatters too much, the ally who hesitates when loyalty costs something, the enemy who disguises his hostility with charm. Your detachment lets you observe motives without being blinded by desire, and once you see clearly, manipulation becomes impossible. This is why solitude is not emptiness, but a laboratory. It is where you dissect not only others, but yourself. You examine your flaws as a scientist studies fractures in a structure. You strip away behaviors that no longer serve your mission. You destroy illusions, layer by layer, until what remains is solid, sharp, and precise. Most people can't do this. They need an audience to feel real. They need witnesses to believe they exist. But you've evolved past that. You can sit in an empty room and feel whole. You can build in silence without applause. And that, paradoxically, makes you terrifying. Because your power doesn't depend on them. Do you see it yet? This is what makes you unreadable. The moment people realize they can't predict you, they begin to fear you. They invent stories to explain you. They call you cold, distant, mysterious. But what they really mean is, we cannot control you. And that terrifies them more than any open threat. Now, let me challenge you again. The next time someone tries to provoke you, will you react like a slave to ego, rushing to defend, to explain, to prove? Or will you remain still, silent, detached, forcing them to reveal their own weakness while you reveal nothing? Because in that moment, you will discover the difference between the manipulated and the master. The manipulated reacts, the master observes. This is why detachment is not just discipline, it is dominance. And if you embrace it fully, you will realize what Machiavelli himself hinted at in The Prince. The appearance of control matters less than actual control. True power is not about looking strong. It is about being untouchable, unbothered, unmoved. Ego burns out. Strategy endures. Detachment wins. Scarcity and mystery. Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. For everyone can see, but few can feel." He understood a law of power most people never grasp. Perception is stronger than reality. And nothing manipulates perception more effectively than scarcity and mystery. Think about it. Why are diamonds valuable? Not because they're useful, but because they're rare. Why do people desire what's forbidden? Because mystery creates obsession. When something or someone cannot be easily obtained or understood, it ignites curiosity, speculation, even fear. Now imagine applying this law to yourself. Most people spend their lives trying to be everywhere. They post daily, speak constantly, flood every room with their presence. They think visibility equals importance. But here's the trap. Overexposure breeds weakness. The more people see of you, the less they value you. Familiarity does not breed respect, it breeds contempt. You, on the other hand, choose the opposite path. You master scarcity, you make your presence rare, and with rarity, your value multiplies. When you enter a room, people notice. Not because you shouted the loudest, but because your absence made your arrival impossible to ignore. This is why mystery is so dangerous. It forces others to fill in the blanks. They invent stories to explain you. They project strength, depth, and secrets onto you. And the less you reveal, the more they obsess. The fewer your words, the heavier each one lands. The rarer your presence, the more its weight bends the room. Machiavelli warned rulers to avoid being too generous, too open, too transparent. Why? Because once your people know you fully, they stop fearing you. Mystery, on the other hand, keeps them guessing. And when people cannot predict you, they hesitate. Hesitation is power. Ask yourself, why do the most feared predators hunt in silence? Why does the lion stalk unseen before the strike? Because anticipation destroys confidence. The prey begins to imagine the predator everywhere until fear does most of the work before the attack even begins. You are that predator now. Silence is your camouflage. Scarcity is your shadow. Mystery is the tension in the air before the strike. But mystery requires discipline. It is destroyed the moment you explain yourself. That's why you do not justify. You do not overshare. You do not reveal your inner world to those who haven't earned it. Even loyalty must be tested, because every explanation you hand over is a key they might use to unlock doors you never intended them to open. So, what do you reveal? As little as possible. What do you hide? Almost everything. And when you finally choose to reveal something, you do it deliberately, not out of fear, not out of pressure, but out of control. That choice alone sets you apart from the masses, who spill secrets under the slightest weight of discomfort. Scarcity also reshapes how others perceive time with you. When you are always available, you become disposable. When you are rare, people treat every moment with you as valuable. Scarcity multiplies significance. It forces them to pay attention, it forces them to wait, and waiting builds desire. Let me ask you, how many times have you noticed that the quiet one in the room attracts more curiosity than the one who never stops talking? The quiet one is a puzzle, an unanswered question, and humans cannot resist questions without answers. That's why mystery is not only a shield, but a sword. It protects you from intrusion while pulling others deeper into your orbit. But here's the warning Machiavelli would give you. Mystery must be balanced with presence. Too much absence, and you risk irrelevance. Too much mystery, and you risk alienation. The art is in control, in deciding when to vanish and when to appear, when to let them believe you're dormant, and when to strike with undeniable force. Think of it like thunder. Silence lulls the world into calm until the storm breaks. The more unexpected your emergence, the greater its impact. That is how you make scarcity and mystery your weapons. So the next time you feel tempted to overshare, to explain, to fill silence with words, remember this. Mystery multiplies value, scarcity creates demand, and silence bends perception. Ask yourself right now, do people know too much about you? Have you given away your inner map too freely? Or are you cultivating the discipline of rarity, the presence of mystery, the silence that makes the world lean in, waiting, uncertain, afraid? Because the more they guess, the more you control, and the less you reveal, the more power you hold. Scarcity breeds significance. Mystery breeds fear. Together, they breed control. Patience and timing. Machiavelli warned rulers of a timeless truth. Whosoever desires constant success must change his conduct with the times. Beneath those words lies the secret weapon most people will never master: patience. Because here is the reality. Most people lose not because they are weak, but because they cannot wait. Look around. In a world obsessed with instant gratification, silence and patience are seen as weaknesses. Everyone is rushing to speak, to post, to prove, to grab attention before it disappears. They exhaust themselves chasing applause, while you move at the pace of strategy. You don't panic, you don't chase, you don't rush, you wait, because timing is everything. Think of a sniper. He doesn't fire endlessly, wasting bullets to prove he's shooting. He waits, steady, invisible, until the moment cannot be ignored, and when he strikes, the entire battlefield changes in an instant. That is patience as power. Solitude trains you for this. In silence, you learn to endure without immediate reward. You learn to build without recognition, to prepare without applause. This separates you from the masses who announce every idea before it's even formed, who suffocate their own plans under the weight of premature exposure. They confuse momentum with mastery. You know better. Here's the Machiavellian principle. Time is not your enemy. Time is your leverage. Impatience destroys kingdoms. History proves it. Leaders who struck too soon, who revealed their hand too early, condemned themselves to failure. Caesar himself rose because he knew when to cross the Rubicon, and more importantly, when not to. Napoleon understood when to bide his time, letting rivals weaken themselves before he marched. Great rulers, great strategists, never rush. They shape time like a sculptor shapes stone. Most people, however, are prisoners of time. They panic when results don't arrive instantly. They abandon their plans too early. They mistake stillness for stagnation. You've learned the opposite. Stillness is not the absence of progress. It is the preparation for decisive action. But here is where discipline comes in. Patience is not passive. It is not waiting idly, hoping for miracles. Patience is active restraint. It is building quietly in the shadows while others burn out in the spotlight. It is sharpening your weapons while they dull theirs through constant motion. Let me give you a modern example. Look at business, at politics, at war. The ones who endure are not the ones who move fastest. They are the ones who outlast. Companies chasing trends vanish overnight. Leaders who react emotionally collapse under pressure. But those who play the long game, who can survive silence, endure uncertainty, and strike when the timing is perfect, they dominate entire eras. Think of it like chess. The novice makes moves for activity's sake. The master makes moves only when they alter the board. If the position isn't ripe, the master waits. He lets the opponent reveal impatience. He lets them weaken themselves. And when the strike comes, it feels inevitable. That is what you must become, a strategist of time. And here's the paradox. The more patient you become, the faster your progress appears to others. Why? Because they only notice your emergence, not the years of silence, not the hours of planning. To them, it looks like you appeared out of nowhere. But you know the truth. It was built brick by brick in solitude, until the moment ripened for revelation. This is why patience terrifies your enemies. They don't know if you're preparing, resting, or waiting. Your stillness is camouflage. Your timing is invisible. While they waste themselves on constant performance, you conserve energy, you preserve strength, and when you finally strike, it's already too late. Now pause and ask yourself, how many opportunities have you destroyed in your own life by moving too soon? How many plans died because you couldn't resist announcing them? How many times did ego pull you into a fight that strategy would have ignored? If you recognize this pattern, then you already understand the cost of impatience. Machiavelli knew this. He wrote that fortune favors those prepared to act when the moment arrives. But preparation means silence. It means resisting ego, resisting the crowd's pace, resisting the illusion that constant movement equals progress. So here's the rule. You do not move by the world's clock. The world obeys urgency. You obey strategy. The world reacts. You anticipate. The world panics. You observe. That difference is everything. It is the line between exhaustion and domination. Patience is not glamorous. It doesn't win applause, but it wins wars. And when combined with timing, it becomes lethal. Because timing is the multiplier of power, and action at the wrong time is wasted. The same action at the right time changes everything. This is why you must treat patience as your shield and timing as your sword. Together, they create inevitability. So, when the world rushes, let them. When they panic, stay calm. When they burn themselves out trying to stay visible, you build quietly, invisibly, deliberately, until the moment arrives. And when it does, you strike, not with noise, not with chaos, but with precision. And that is how you turn time itself into a weapon. The final transformation Machiavelli wrote, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." It is not speed he is praising, but clarity, the ability to act without hesitation once the moment ripens. And this clarity is the ultimate prize of solitude. By now, you've seen how silence shapes perception, how detachment shields you from manipulation, how scarcity multiplies your value, and how patience makes timing your weapon. But what happens when all of these combine? You stop being merely strategic. You stop being just mysterious. You become something far more dangerous, an architect of fate. Because the truth is, most people are not living. They are reacting. They chase trends, emotions, temptations. They follow scripts written by others, scripts handed down by society, by family, by fear. They believe they're making choices when in reality, they're just following cues. You, however, burned those scripts. You no longer orbit their expectations. You stop trading your identity for approval. You no longer beg for inclusion or fear exclusion. You've left behind the emotional marketplace where people barter dignity for validation. And in that silence, you built something they cannot define. That's what makes you powerful now. Not wealth, not applause, but control over yourself. And from that control over the game. Here's the secret. Once you stop needing external permission, you realize you've had the authority all along. You don't wait for opportunity, you create it. You don't beg for doors to open. You build your own and decide when they open. You don't ask whether you're allowed to act. You act, and only afterward do others realize the board was yours to design. This is the highest form of Machiavellian power, not domination through noise, but domination through design. Not forcing others to obey, but constructing the terrain so their obedience becomes inevitable. Think about storms. They don't negotiate, they don't announce. They gather invisibly until the sky breaks without warning. That is what you've become, a force of inevitability. By the time others notice, it's too late. You were shaping the battlefield in silence, and now every move they make falls into your design. But this level of mastery requires one final transformation: disappearing even from yourself. What does that mean? It means you no longer debate with fear. You no longer negotiate with hesitation. You no longer wrestle with emotions before acting. You become both observer and executor. The mind that plans and the hand that strikes operate as one. This is freedom on a level few ever touch, because most people are slaves not only to society, but to their own impulses. They sabotage themselves long before their enemies ever touch them. But you've silenced the noise within, and that silence has turned into precision. Now, your every word, every appearance, every strike carries weight. You don't waste yourself. You don't dilute your presence. You've become what they cannot explain, cannot predict, cannot replicate. And here's the irony. You never set out to be feared. You never set out to be admired. You sought clarity, and clarity made you dangerous. You sought peace through discipline, and that discipline made you powerful. You sought freedom, and that freedom made you untouchable. Do you see now why they fear you? It's not cruelty. It's not malice. It's because you've escaped their chains. You no longer play their game, and your very existence is proof they could escape too, if only they had the courage. That mirror unsettles them. They hate it, but they can't ignore it. And this is your final advantage. You don't need to be everywhere. You don't need to win every skirmish. You don't need to prove anything. You are already unforgettable, not for the noise you made, but for the storm you've become. So where do you go from here? You go forward with the discipline of the strategist, the silence of the predator, the patience of the ruler, and the clarity of the architect. You understand now that life isn't a stage where you perform for applause. It's a battlefield you redesign in your own image. The world will never fully understand you, and that is your shield. The world will never predict you, and that is your sword. The world will never control you, and that is your legacy. Now ask yourself one final question. Will you spend your life rushing to be seen, desperate to be remembered for noise? Or will you embrace solitude, wield mystery, master timing, and be remembered as the one who bent the game itself? Because once you choose the latter, there is no turning back. This is not about being liked. This is not about being understood. This is about being undeniable. And if you're still here, listening, absorbing, then you already know. You've stepped onto that path. You've burned the bridge back to comfort, back to mediocrity, back to the herd. You are no longer one of them. You are the storm they forgot to fear until it was too late. You are the architect of your own fate.